Hi there. Today we're going to be starting a new project with this set neck guitar. It's a Firebird style on a mahogany body. Color is Sparkling Burgundy. It's a Gibson color from the early to mid 60s. I just think it looks really good. It's kind of Gibson's answer to Candy Apple Red. So since it's an open grain species of wood, we're going to be starting off by grain filling it, and then we'll move on to our sanding sealer, our color coats, and then our clear coats, and then we'll follow that up with wet sanding and buffing after it's had a few weeks to dry. Yeah, thanks for joining us. Okay, before we start spraying this guitar, we're going to do an application of red mahogany grain filler on it. You do have the option of doing a wash coat of sealer first, which kind of just speeds up the process a bit, but if you really want to color the wood with the grain filler, you want to do it on the bare wood first. I have an example here, just a mahogany body. This side, we did a wash coat of sealer first, so it only left the pores open. So when we put the grain filler onto it, it just filled up and colored those pores. On this side, we applied it to the bare wood, and you can just see it's much more saturated because it actually stained the mahogany. So it's just kind of up to you if there's a certain look that you want. If your lacquer chips away, if you want that kind of relic look, I think just having the wood stained just kind of has a nice look to it. So it's kind of up to you how you want to proceed on it. We're going to tape off the fretboard just because we don't want to color that at all. And I've got a respirator because the mineral spirits in the grain filler do have some fumes. We'll wear gloves and eye protection also. And yeah, we'll get to it now.
Taping off the binding and fretboard is crucial to make sure that it's not exposed to the grain filler or the dyes that color it. I find frog tape works really well for not letting any color creep underneath. Our grain filler is oil-based and can settle out very quickly. You'll likely need to mix it for a couple of minutes to get it back to a fully consistent paste. Once fully mixed, it should look like smooth peanut butter. I usually use a cheap paintbrush that can be discarded at the end of application. Once the surface that you're working on is completely covered, it should look wet and somewhat shiny. You'll want to let it sit for approximately 10 minutes so that the mineral spirits can flash off, and then we'll scrape off the excess filler. It's best to scrape perpendicular to the grain pattern as much as possible, as it helps not to pull the filler out of the pores. Once you've scraped off as much filler as you can from the surface, you'll want to buff off any residue on the surface before it has a chance to dry. I like to use a heavy painter's cloth, but paper towels can even work if you're in a pinch. Once the surfaces have all been buffed clean, we'll let the instrument dry overnight.
Okay, so this has had a night to dry now. We pulled off the tape to expose the side of the fretboard, so the binding is exposed. I'm just gonna mask off just the very top of the fretboard now. In a few minutes, we're gonna start spraying our sanding sealer, and we want that to cover the sides of the binding as well as everything else. So yeah, we'll get to that now.
If you found any areas that still have grain filler on the surface, this is the time where you'll want to block sand a level. It's not a huge deal if you sand through the color, as for this project we'll be applying an opaque lacquer color anyway.
Quart of sanding sealer here. Realistically, on this, we could probably get by with one of the 8-ounce cans. But we're gonna crack this open just in case we need more. Since it's a high solids content, we really want to mix it up well. You can see like it's been sitting probably for a couple weeks, so there is some settling that's occurred on the bottom. Just all the solids. Basically, for the most part, sanding sealer is like clear lacquer, but with 3 times the amount of solids in it. Plus there's a little bit of zinc to kind of aid in the sanding, just to make it sand out easier. So it is quite a bit thicker.
Okay, so we're onto our sanding sealer coats here. We're only showing a portion of these, but basically we'll apply 3 coats total, each coat consisting of 3 passes. Space each coat at least 1 hour apart so that the solvents have enough time to flash off. Remember to try and only spray on days where the humidity is 50% or lower, or you may run into some blushing issues. This is when moisture in the air gets trapped in the wet lacquer and doesn't have enough time to escape before the lacquer dries. And it kind of leaves a milky, kind of hazy effect in the lacquer. If this does occur, it can be easily corrected with a light application of blush remover, but just try to be aware and save yourself the headache. This instrument has had a night to dry, and now we're on to our wet sanding of the sealer coats. At this point, we've grain filled the body and sprayed 3 coats of sealer, so we have a really good base to begin creating a consistent level surface for our metallic coats to sit on top of. Metallics will show any inconsistencies in the surface that they're applied to, so grain patterns, orange peel from the sealer, nicks or gouges in the wood, these all translate easily when the metal flake reflects the light. A couple coats of white primer can be another method to smooth out the surface even further after the sealer coats, but Gibson traditionally hasn't used primer, and with this project we're trying to keep it in line with a standard Gibson finish. We're block sanding the entire surface with 400 grit, and the main purpose is to remove any texture from the sealer coats. Often once lacquer is dried, it has what some people refer to as an orange peel texture, which is very common, and the easiest way to smooth it out is to wet sand. Any areas that have not been scuffed by the sandpaper will usually appear somewhat shiny or glossy, and as you sand, you'll see how the low points are the last to be touched by the sandpaper. You want to keep sanding until everything is dull in appearance and there are no more shiny divots. Once your wet sanding is completed, I usually like to take the instrument and let it dry overnight before moving on to the color coats, just in case there's any mineral spirits still soaked into the wood or any cavities. Mineral spirits acts like oil and water with lacquer and can cause contamination issues such as fish eyes. If your project has any binding, either on the sides of the neck or on the body, this is where you'll want to tape it off so that the color coats don't cover it. This will be removed after our color coats are applied, before the clear coats are sprayed. We're getting our Sparkling Burgundy lacquer ready to spray here. Most of our lacquers are spray ready and can be used right out of the can if conditions are ideal, but depending on your setup and environment, a lot of users prefer to thin the lacquer to a 1:3 or 1:4 thinner to lacquer ratio, which can allow for it to go on a bit thinner and give it a bit more time to flash off. For a project this size, 1 8-ounce can of lacquer should be enough for your color coats, but it can be useful to have some extra on hand if needed. We did 3 passes on this instrument total with our Sparkling Burgundy lacquer. With metallics, there's kind of a sweet spot where you don't want to spray it too wet as the flakes can start to pool, but you also don't want to spray it too lightly and have a lot of texture on the surface, which could happen if the lacquer doesn't have enough time to fully flow out. So give it a good once over, and I usually like to spray 2 or 3 lighter coats rather than 1 heavy one. We did 2 passes in this video, and then we took it out into the sunlight just to make sure everything was consistent. You can tell it wasn't completely opaque yet. You can still see a few small areas of grain pattern showing through, so we took it back into the booth for 1 more pass, and then we were good to go.
Okay, so yesterday we finished the metallic coats on this. Today we're gonna do our black headstock. We're gonna tape it off for that, and then we can start on our clear coats once that's complete. In a minute here, we're just gonna pull off the tape off the sides of the fretboard. Optimally, it's kind of good practice to do it the day of, maybe 3-4 hours after your final coat is sprayed, just while it's still got a little bit of flexibility to it, but we're a day after, shouldn't be too much of an issue. Okay, so we've got the headstock all taped off. I used pinstriping tape for the transition where it's actually going to go from black to the metallic color. I've just found that that really gives you the nicest, cleanest line in my experience. Like green painter's tape I use for kind of taping off the majority of the area, but for that transition I like to use pinstriping tape. I've just never had any paint creep under that. I like to use just a big garbage bag to cover up the majority of the guitar so we don't get any black lacquer on it, and just cut a small hole just to expose the headstock, and then we're good to go.
Our black headstock coats are really straightforward. Everything except the face is taped off, and we just want to do a couple passes to make sure everything is fully covered. When spraying a small area like this, it's easy to spray too much and end up with a run. So if you're new to spraying, remember to back off your gun a little bit and don't spray too close. Again, several lighter passes can reduce the risk of runs compared to one heavy application. Once the headstock is sprayed, give it an hour or so to dry, and then carefully and gently remove your tape. You can proceed onto your clear coats on the same day if you want from here. Okay, we're on to our clear coats. It's always a good idea to give all the surfaces a once over with a tack cloth before you do a new coat, just to make sure there's no dust on the surface. We did a total of 10 coats, each consisting of 3 passes. As always, we spaced the coats 1 hour apart and didn't apply more than 3 in any one day. If you're new to finishing and are concerned about sanding through, maybe opt for a couple extra coats. As many as 12 or 13 isn't uncommon, as it will give you a bit more of a buffer for sand throughs. If you're after a relic finish and are fine with the odd sand through on a corner or a contour, you can probably get away with upwards of 8 coats. There's not much of a reason for sanding between coats unless some dust or small debris has landed in the finish. In that case, you'll want to let it dry overnight and then tackle it gently with something like 600 grit, making sure not to go through your color coats. Before we do our final wet sanding, I usually like to let everything dry for 4 weeks after the final clear coat has been applied. This is enough time for almost all of the solvents to flash off, and when the finish is nice and hard, it's much easier to level and buff. I've seen people sand it as early as 1 week, but I've noticed you'll start off with a mirror flat shine, and as the weeks and months go on, you'll see some of that surface texture start to come back once the rest of the solvents have kind of gassed off. When I wet sand, I like to start with 400 grit and progress to 1200 or 1500 grit before moving on to polishing. Just like earlier in the video, we're using mineral spirits for our wet sanding solution, as it won't swell the wood. Most of our time will be spent on our first grit, because that's going to be what basically levels the entire surface. Everything from there is just removing the scratches from the grits before that. So we'll start off with 400 grit, but you can start with 600 if you want to be extra cautious. It's less chance of sanding through. It'll just take a little bit longer. Keep wiping the area dry that you're working on, as we're only trying to sand the areas that still have any kind of shiny divots. Once the sandpaper makes contact with those areas, it'll look dull instead of glossy, and that's when you want to step up to the next grit. It's a good idea to use a sanding block so that you don't end up with inconsistencies in your surface. And for the cutaways and contours, I usually just have a small 4-inch strip ready to go of each grit. After we've completed our wet sanding, we're on to our final polishing, which consists of a medium and a fine compound. Make sure you have 2 separate microfiber cloths on hand, one for each. Put a small amount of the polish onto a cloth and work it into the surface in small circular patterns. The medium polish will do most of the work in removing the scratches from the sanding and will bring out a lot of the shine. Once you've completed the medium compound, repeat the process with the fine, and this will remove the last few micro scratches or swirl marks. If you finish this step and can still see a fair amount of scratches, you may need to repeat the medium polish or potentially go back to 1500 grit wet sanding, but give the medium polish another shot first as it's quite effective.